Joining me now is Ken Klippenstein, who's a reporter for The Intercept, and he is notoriously efficient and effective with the Freedom of Information Act requests to get major scoops on all kinds of stories. Ken, first and foremost, thanks for joining us. How are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Ben?
Doing great. You dropped a recent article for The Intercept, and the context of it is the Obama administration prosecuting more than twice as many leakers under the World War I era Espionage Act, as well as previous administrations combined. However, the Trump administration blew that number out of the water. Could you talk about what you found with your investigation?
Yeah, what's incredible is that, as you said, the number of individuals who leaked to the press and were prosecuted, not just prosecuted for leaking classified information, but prosecuted under the Espionage Act, which in itself is a very controversial thing to do because, you know, whatever you think of disclosing classified information to the public, to the members of the news media, how is that espionage? You're not selling that to a foreign adversary like Russia or China or Iran. But setting that aside, there was already a record number under the Obama administration, more than twice as many prosecutions of those cases than every preceding administration combined. So a huge number under the Biden administration. And as you say, the Trump administration, they referred even more than the Obama administration did. They referred over 300 cases of classified leaks to the press, to the Justice Department for prosecution. So that in itself is an astonishing number. And it suggests that there is a trend afoot. We're going to see how the Biden administration manages dealing with this. But, you know, I cover national security a lot. And even for people that are not leaking classified information, this has the effect of scaring everyone. I have countless examples of people that are just like, oh, God, I don't want to give you a quote. And I say to them, well, this isn't even classified. They're like, well, who knows what could be, you know, there are things that could be retroactively classified, things that everyone knows are classified somewhere on the books, and they could throw the book at you using that. So it has a chilling effect on people being able to talk to the press. And that's really what hurts the...
Yeah, I want to
consuming news, which I hope is. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that delay there for a second, but I want to contextualize this a little bit more for the audience, for people who may not understand like how impactful this is for journalism, for reporting, for investigative reporters, for how we find out information about our government. Because the government has the capacity to hide as much as they want to hide. But in addition to hiding things behind the veil of confidentiality, they now are using a very aggressive, and I can't just say now because it's been happening for some time, right? They are aggressively going after not only people who leak information, but now, in a sense, they're trying to instill a fear in journalists from even receiving that information. So could you just break it down to the real practical, why does this matter to somebody on the streets versus the intricacies of it, which are equally as important, but help everyone understand why this matters?
Yeah, so this isn't something that just affects journalists, although, you know, at first glance it might look that way. The quality of the reporting that you're going to get is going to be a lot lower. There's going to be more focus on, you know, palace intrigue. What did Melania say? What did, you know, Jill Biden say? This kind of thing, rather than the really sensitive stuff that gives you insight into what are we doing overseas? How is the war machine being handled? And it's not just military stuff. There are things the FBI has that are classified. There are things law enforcement has that are classified. And as I said before, it's not just classified information. People end up getting the attitude, oh, God, this is scary. I don't want to talk to the press at all. So what you end up getting is more puff pieces, more opinion stuff, more things that don't give you an idea of what's going on that's actionable that police, military, intelligence community might be doing. And all of that stuff is on the rise, not just since 9/11, but now we've got the Capitol thing going on. The riot that took place on January 6th, there's a debate right now about whether they want to pass a new law it's kind of similar to the Patriot Act, where they would be able to designate domestic groups terrorist organizations. And it's extremely hard, just from my personal experience, to get people to talk about these things because they're so scared of the Justice Department and this sort of machine gun approach they have of referring I said before, over 300 leaks referred to the FBI for investigation, potentially prosecution, under 4 years. Bear in mind, that was a one-term administration. So that's more than Obama's 2 terms. So this is clearly on the rise. And again, the effect that has is just shoddier, lower quality, less aggressive reporting all around for anyone to read.
So what they've done is they've relegated us to covering, like you said, the puff pieces versus the things that matter. And if we are really serious about anything that we talk about as progressives, as people who want liberation for all people, domestically and foreign, this strikes at the core of our ability to hold this government accountable. And in your reporting, you said 334 leaks were referred to for FBI criminal investigation underneath the Trump administration. What do you know, and I know we don't have a crystal ball, but do you think this is going to continue to expand? Because there's an expansion of this, right? There was an expansion underneath Barack Obama. So to me, and then expanded, obviously, even more so underneath Donald Trump. There seems to be a consensus across party lines as it pertains to instilling this kind of fear in not only journalists, but the general public.
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible it'll get worse. Early signs don't look great. I cite in the piece the example that the Trump administration established. They were referring so many of these cases of prosecution to the FBI that the FBI ended up opening a new leaks unit specifically for media leaks. And someone in the former counterintelligence official within the FBI told me that this was set up for all the cases they were going after because of the Russia investigation. If you want people to stop talking to the press, a good way to do it isn't even necessarily prosecute them, but to just send the FBI in. You start polygraphing people and send the FBI in. You start polygraphing people and interviewing them and threatening them with potential prosecution. That in itself is going to be enough for everyone to be like, "Whoa, we better stop talking to the New York Times about what's going on here." And so I asked the administration now. I asked the FBI, "Did you guys close down that new leak investigations unit?" And they did respond, but they didn't want to comment. They said no comment, and so you can guess what that means. Certainly the trend line is going upwards from not just Bush was an increase over his predecessor, Obama was a significant increase over Bush, and now we see in one term Trump's done more referrals than in two terms of Obama. So certainly the trend line is not looking good.
And then a couple more questions here, because you've worked for quite a few extremely reputable outlets, right? And everywhere you go, you fight, and your tool is the Freedom of Information Act, right? FOIA requests. Have you seen, and this is not for you to talk about any of your previous employers, but in the industry in general, are these media outlets a little more hesitant and reserved in terms of going after this information because of this escalation? Or are you seeing, I'm hoping, the opposite possibility, which is these outlets are like, no, let's double down and fight even harder? What is kind of the sentiment that you're seeing in the industry?
Well, there is a lot of anxiety. A lot of the bigger news organizations, they have attorneys, and their goal is to minimize risk. And I'll give you an example. There was one big outlet that everyone would recognize. I don't want to name names. That had their legal team sit down their reporters and say, don't tell people to install encryption. And I thought, that's weird. Encryption is a way that you can protect your communications from, penetration, not just from law enforcement, but from foreign intelligence services, hackers, so on and so forth. And I said to my friend, why did they say that? And she said to me, oh, they told us that they're worried that this could be construed as conspiracy. And I said, conspiracy to what? She's like, well, conspiracy to disclose classified information. So it's like, the fear was that we're helping somebody in this endeavor of telling us what's going on, and maybe the Justice Department could say then that we've engaged conspiracy to disclose this information, and that to me sounds crazy. And that's one example of several that I can mention. But if they're too scared to install encryption, you can assume that they're going to be nervous about talking and publishing certain things. So it's a very subtle thing of kind of self-censoring, and some of it may not even be conscious. You may just become more cautious in what you do and say as a consequence of all this.
I just got to emphasize something here. You said that they're even saying don't install encryption on their phones. Like, for example, like don't install the Signal app and communicate that way, because then it can be construed. So what do we do? I know this may not, I don't know if you've thought about this, and I don't know if this is a good question for you, but it begs the question. what the hell do we do when we have this all powerful, the greatest empire? When I say great, I mean largest and the most abusive empire in the history of the world, having the ability to shut down our one channel of holding them accountable. Like, what do we do in response to this continued crackdown?
Same thing as with anything, register your dissatisfaction, pressure the government, ideally get organized, because what we have now is a sort of dissipated process where, people take to online, and I'm certainly part of this too, if you follow me on Twitter. But the more organized folks can become, the more they can register that dissatisfaction in a way that's going to impose a political cost on leadership. And above all, I would say too, coming out of the Trump administration, take off those rosy glasses that so many liberals now have about the Justice Department and the FBI, and recognize that, maybe they can, do some good things. And I do think we need a justice system. I wish it would look different than what it did. But recognize that historically, these agencies have not been on the side of protesters and activists and the like, because we're living in a very scary time when, the half of the country that had been sort of critical of these agencies before now is openly, almost worshiping them, the intelligence services and the law enforcement.
In other words, the FBI is not your friend.
Right.
That's what the FBI, no matter who's wielding that power, they are not our friends. Ken Klippenstein, thanks so much, man, for coming and joining us. Your recent article for The Intercept is the Trump administration referred a record number of leaks for criminal investigation. I suggest everyone go check it out and be aware of what's actually happening to us. Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Great to talk to you, Ben.